I'm sure that the country has been following what's going on in the United States of America. And been following this closely since we have a large number of our people who live in that country. And they're in election season, and it's very interesting to see what the issues are that they're speaking about in their campaign. We've all expressed as a country our concern with the attempted assassination of former President Trump. And we have always maintained that political violence have no place in this world, that politics must be about a contest of ideas and track records. And therefore, we're appalled at that attempt in the life of a presidential candidate, more so in the United States of America. One would expect this to happen if you look at world history in the third world, but this happened in the United States of America. The Republican convention is ongoing, and soon this would be followed by the Democratic convention. And without being partisan, one has to examine what the speeches are about at this convention and then the one to follow. A substantial amount of time is dedicated at the Republican convention to talk about an issue that in Guyana's context has been raised often: the issue of cost of living. Now, in the United States of America, there's a claim by the speakers that this is devastating large sections of the population and causing many people to suffer hardships. The US has the largest economy in the world. They have a huge productive capacity, manufacturing and otherwise. The cost of freight for their import is substantially less, say, from China to the US than China to Guyana. Their tariffs are often lower than most countries in the world. Yet, they've had this major upsurge in prices. And at the convention, people who spoke about several issues. They spoke about the price of gas at the pump, so transportation prices increasing. They said that utility bills went up in the United States of America by about 35%. That is water and electricity. They spoke about the mortgage rates and the affordability of homes going beyond the reach of many middle-class people, but also the hardships because of the increase in mortgage rates by about 4 percentage points from, say, a few years back. So people were paying maybe just about 2% on their mortgages. They now have to pay 6%. on their mortgages. They spoke about food prices increasing. And all of these are very relevant in our local context. And I hope that people would examine the differences between our countries and also look at the policy responses that we have embarked upon in Guyana to address these issues. So we have a smaller country, but with a substantially higher growth rate than the United States of America, so therefore more inflationary pressures because of higher growth rates. That's normal. I spoke of that last week. The economy overheats, the demand far outstrips supply, and therefore there is an upward pressure on prices. So in spite of all of that, we have had some government policy interventions. And look at these very same things that I spoke of. The price of gas at the pump. Last week I spoke of us removing the 50% excise tax, which was equivalent to $81 billion of taxes we reduced. $81 billion of taxes reduced on only two items, diesel and gas. That has resulted now in a $500 per gallon subsidy to people when they go to fill up their tanks. Or if you buy diesel for your tractor or your heavy duty equipment or your factory. 500 Guyana dollars, which is $2.5 US nearly, for every gallon that you purchase. So we have kept prices at the pump relatively stable, and we have avoided the increase in transport costs or the cost of production increases associated with higher fuel costs. And this is in a small country. Secondly, on the utility bills, we have kept electricity rates constant. It has cost us 66 to 70 million US dollars of subsidy only on fuel, leaving out the tens of billions that we're spending on new power generating capacity and upgrading the transmission system that would, by next year, yield lower prices. So we are aiming for a cut in utility bills by 50% by next year. So we have a medium-term plan, and we have kept the pain away from people of increased fuel costs around the world. So our utility bills on electricity has not gone up since we got into office. And secondly, water rates have been cut by 5%. So those are your utility bills. If you look at mortgage rates in Guyana, they've come down in spite of global increase in interest rates. It's more affordable to get a loan now and take out a mortgage for if you want home ownership. And a lot of people are finding this when they're finding this out when they go to the banks. It's a steep decline, and largely because of, again, a government policy intervention that loans below income arising from loans below a certain threshold, 40,000 US dollars, which is $8 million, that we remove the corporate tax from the income arising from those loans. So again, a direct government policy intervention to ensure that the mortgage rates come down. We've done this for certain sections of the productive sector too. And then even at the higher levels, we have worked with the banks to ensure that the interest rate come down. Apart from that, we have developed 33,000 house lots. We're building homes, core homes. We're building young professional homes. We're increasing the supply of homes. So a Guyanese person now, even if they didn't get a house lot as yet, knows that once they apply, they will get a house lot. It might take a little bit longer. We're up to 2019 now, the allocations, but once they apply, they will get it because we're working at developing new house lots every year. By this year, we would have completed 40,000 more house lots since we got into office. But they know that. You heard what people have been saying in the US a lot. Now they're politicians, and it may be not totally true, but they're saying people now can't afford a home in the future. But in Guyana's case, every young person who applies for a house lot or anyone knows that sometime, if they don't get it today, they'll get it in the future. They know also that the government is building homes so that those who don't have the resources to start, they don't have the collateral, can get one of those core homes, because when it's built, we take you to the bank and then you get a mortgage. And the mortgage rates now are so low that it's affordable from the income. So I can go on and on about the sector, but you would see in 4 major categories direct interventions by the government. And if anything, looking at the Republican convention and what's being said there, you should appreciate what this government has done. In 4 years, especially with 2 years lost to COVID, the first 2 years lost to COVID, and with all the inflationary pressures that are affecting a big economy like the United States of America, with a greater capacity to handle this, we in Guyana have, because of direct government policy interventions, we have kept some of the most substantial areas in cost of living increases that other countries face. We have kept them away from our people. Now, yes, it's true that food prices have moved up, and we are working to ensure a greater supply response, because if people produce more, then the prices will come down. There are some things we can't avoid. If you import and the freight go up and the prices internationally go up, we can't avoid that. But you can see a clear plan of the government to address this cost of living issue. Now, this gets lost among many people, including the reporters because some of them, like I've seen this series in the Starbuck News, they should look at what is being said in a big country like the US, and then they will have a deep appreciation of what we have done. Now, think about the alternative. Think about an APNU in government. When APNU was in government in the 5 years, we had inflation too. In fact, the inflation rates were around the same rates that we have today. However, the fuel prices, which was a key determinant of a lot of the movement upwards, was about a fraction of the price. In 2015, 2016, the cost of a barrel of fuel, right, was about $30, $35. Now it's $105, nearly 3 times as much. So they didn't have the inflationary pressure. In fact, the first year of APNU government in 2016, if you check the balance of payment, you will see that they saved nearly $350 million US from the import of fuel, that the fuel bill came down by about $350 million. So there was no inflationary pressure. You didn't have COVID in the APNU period. It's only in the last 3 months, and they shut down the country of our new tenure. This is after the elections. But you didn't have COVID with factories shutting down, freight costs going up by 500%. And yet, we had inflation. It was driven by taxation. The taxes that they put on commodities, that we removed almost $40 billion of taxes in the first years. They had VAT on electricity, VAT on water, they had VAT on data, they had VAT on hinterland freight, hinterland travel, they had VAT on a whole range of commodities. So that's the alternative. Where does this comparison take place? So you hear, oh, Norton saying cost of living, we're worried about that. It seems to be a campaign in some of the newspapers, but they don't tell the whole story. They don't tell the whole truth. They don't compare with the alternative, that we have a government that had a government that was totally inept policy-wise. If they had to confront all the challenges we had to confront, COVID and otherwise, they would have been totally lost, and we would have had a significantly worse situation today. And that is how you compare parties: track record and policies. I can outline what we did. I can outline that, and I can tell you clearly here what we did and how much it cost us. I'm not even going to speak today at length about the other things that I've been mentioning here. But whilst that has happened, we move from joblessness, and to tell you the truth, that's a major thing. Work gives dignity to people. If you can't find work, then it's a big problem. And I know, because I sat in the office of leader of the opposition for 5 years, and the tons of people who came, who had work and lost their work, and those who were looking for work and couldn't find it. And I'm not talking only about the Venezuelan migrants who were lingering around and prepared to work for cheap, that you can't find anymore, or you can't find them to work for cheap anymore, because they're all working. Everybody is working. We have labor shortages. You try to find a gardener or a plumber or a laborer who will work 5 days a week, not take 2 days off. And now, at $5,000 or even $6,000 a day, you try to find one of those in Georgetown who will work with you, and you're going to have a hard time doing that. In every place, in the fast food places, more of our people are working. Young women have options now. They can study, they can work, they have moved from jobs to jobs. You didn't have that option in the past. So the environment has totally changed. We have 60,000 of our people more working, who are now working on the avenue, earning, therefore they can manage. Imagine if you had a cost of living increase and you were not working too. When you're not working. So that picture is not told, because when you listen to these guys, you would think, oh, they managed this country perfectly in that period. They don't talk about the joblessness or the people who lost jobs. You ask every sector. I'm not talking about the 7,000 sugar workers they sent home. I'm talking about people in mining or in forestry and the other areas of the economy, retail, sales, etc. There's no money in circulation, because the taxation system they put in place, which was raising $90 billion more per year, had sucked up liquidity and working capital from many of our businesses that we then remove as soon as we got back into office. So where is that coming over? Where is that discussion taking place? You're not going to get it from Norton or Nigel Hughes, because they want to hide that track record, or they're incapable of having that discussion, a policy discussion, because they don't have policies. So they go around, making these pronouncements. Oh, we want this, we want that, we want the other. Too much money on infrastructure, we want to give everybody free money. That's the kind of thing you get from them. But where are their plans? You remember one president, their president, saying people must do pepper sauce and all of that. In a very interview, he was caught by the reporter. We need to play that back, and maybe these small things, just do some pepper sauce or sell something. I can't even remember what he said there. But it was so mediocre. That was their job creation plan for the country. That's the highest level in government, the president telling people, the reporters, what they must do, what people must do to get a job. So we need to point this out. 60,000 people are working and earning more money today who are now working under APNU. Our pensioners, I need to go back to this, their ability to tackle the cost of living, and I know the food prices have gone up, but their ability to tackle it is much more because they're getting nearly $20 billion more per year than they were getting under APNU. And our children, and that's 74,000 of them. And our 200,000 children are getting $10 billion more per year because with the $50,000 grant. So, and the Amerindian communities, just under the LCDS program, forget the budget, forget all that we're doing in the Amerindian communities, the roads and etc. Under the LCDS program last year alone, that APNU and APA tried to sabotage. APA is still trying to sabotage that program. Got $22.5 million in 242 villages. And they completed over 800 projects in their communities, funded from that. That's the largest injection of money that through one initiative that was not there on the APNU, that we started, we earned the money, that didn't cost the taxpayers of this country a cent, because we earn it from the sale of forest carbon, and they got 15% of it, and 85% will go towards building the cokers, more pumps, the Hope Light Canal, so all of us will be safe along the coast too, that we have a safer coast. That money, that was not there on the APNU, but that benefit has gone to the villages. So I can go on about people who are benefiting, but the central issue on this cost of living here, no country, what am I saying? No country in the world is immune from it. APNU would like you to think that they have a policy that will keep you immune from it. They don't have no policy, they just drift in the wind. In fact, it would be worse. So, in the United States of America, the president speaks about it, the Democrats and the Republicans. And that's the biggest economy in the world. But if you look at the same things that they speak of and how it has affected Americans, and look at, in Guyana's case, how policy-wise we ensure that they didn't affect our people, then you see the interventionist nature of this government to keep our people insulated from the worst effects of this global cost of living increase that people are suffering from around the world. And if you look at well, there's so many examples of it. I don't even need to address this. So I'm hoping every time you see a new interview in Starbuck News on cost of living, they would list all of the things that this government has done to increase disposable income, and all of the things we have done to keep all the major increases, all the utility bills, transport bill, affordability of housing, etc. that they would list those to say this is what the government did. And it's not confined to that. Last week I spoke about how we're intervening to help different sectors of the economy cope with the increase in costs, which ultimately pushes up production costs. Not just fuel, but like fertilizer, pesticides, different things to assist those people so that the supply response can grow. I'm not even spoken about supply response. I'm not going to repeat what I said last week, but we have targeted supply responses to increase food production, the production of more building materials, to attenuate the cost increases in those areas. We have a strategy, and it only came out because of our orientation, that this government has a clear vision and a focus. So I'm hoping that when they tackle this, they will say all that we have done and compare it. Some of them should look at the Republican convention, the same ones and including the reporters, to see what comes out there and then compare in the same areas as to how we have tackled this. So after rigging the elections of the Congress, Mr. Norton has resurfaced. He took a breather, said he went abroad and got a nice rest. These guys have luxury of holidays and stuff like that. I remember in the period, the 5 years in opposition, I used to travel like 3 times after I left office. About 3 times a month, I went to Africa for 6 weeks. I was like 40 countries I did stuff in. I was enjoying it. And then I became opposition leader. And in the 5 years, I traveled about 3 times because the work was here. People were suffering. But he has the luxury of taking vacations all the time. Just came out of the Congress, had his vacation. And I wish him well and all of that, had his rest. But he emerged and he did an interview with Sherrod Duncan. And a significant part of this interview was about accountability and corruption. Almost all of it. And the irony could not be lost on the Guyanese people. That this is a person who has just been accused, that is Norton, by his own party of engaging in the most corrupt act in his party of rigging the elections. That he manipulated, the CPU disappeared, fictitious groups were created, he had fake delegates, all of that sort of issue, or those issues came out in the campaign. Not exposed by the People's Progressive Party, but by his own comrades. That's a major act of corruption if you steal elections. In fact, might be the mother of all corruption. Then the same leader was accused by his own party of ordering the treasurer to sign blank checks and leave them with him in the management of the party affairs. We know how that played out. It's in the public domain already. And that's proven. He never said, no, this didn't happen. He didn't even deny it. Because it did happen. He couldn't deny it. So we know that it's a fact. It's not an allegation. You have lots of allegations going around, but this is a fact. We know for a fact that these things happen. It's a fact. The man who was interviewing him, we know for a fact that he hustled the Chronicle money because his own people, when they were campaigning the other faction in his party for the leadership of that party, were busy circulating the documents that he stole money from the Chronicle. So imagine the two of them, one interviewing the other and talking about corruption and accountability. So it's actually laughable. I find it very, very weird and could probably happen only in a country like Guyana. We are unique people. In another country, they would not be able to do that because they have proven track records. So they made a lot of allegations about us, how we were corrupt in the 2015 period. They had 5 years in office. They moved SOCU from the investigative arm of the FIU directly under the control of the Commissioner of Police and the Minister, and they gave them a brief to go after every politician from the PPP. Every single one of us, Samuel Hines, myself, Roger Luncheon, Irfan Ali, Anil Nandalal, every member of the past cabinet had to go into SOCU. They investigated everyone. What were the charges they filed? They filed a few charges against Ashni Singh for selling land at the movie town above the price that we got at the last offer when we went to a public tender where movie town is, at 10 acres. But guess who went to cut the ribbon when the place was open? The same APNU ministers, Bassington and him. They had over 56, I don't remember now, but I think I call the number, but 50-something forensic audits, spent over 100 million, gave people who were sympathetic to them, Christopher Ram and Anand Gulsaran, to do those audits. Every agency did the forensic audits. They couldn't find anything. Through forensic audits, not regular audits. Forensic audits are done when you're preparing a case for criminal action. Couldn't find anything there. They had SARA now be established, an agency staffed by people who are close to them. Elson Lowe was in the agency. I think Eric Phillips was there, Clive Thomas, not a professional body. They want Trotman from the Elections Commission, Ogunseye. I think they're all members of the SARA unit. So a political body there to come after their opponents. And they did. And they could not find corruption. So all the lies that they were telling in the 2015 period, including from the Starbuck News, they were looking to see whether Jagdeo really owned the Marriott, that we had all these bank accounts abroad that they were talking about. You know, they checked every account, maybe Switzerland, they thought we had accounts in these places, etc. They checked everything. They had external groups, they had Sitlington or whatever. You remember how Ramjatan was celebrating with the guy from SOCU when we were called in the day. They met afterwards for a drink and celebrated that. So direct political involvement and political direction to investigate everyone associated with the PPP. And what happened? What did they find in those 5 years? We didn't need to do much to find that they were selling land like Jordan, transferring land to people that the people didn't pay for. large acreages of land. We didn't need to do much investigation to find that Patterson was breaching the tender laws by taking unsolicited bids directly to cabinet. So he was charged for that. We didn't need to do much work to find that the Patterson's ministry, they paid one of their consultants, political consultants, they gave him a contract to supply scales for $80 million that he never supplied. We didn't need much to find all of these things. We didn't have to do forensic audits. It was so evident, the corruption. So they remembered in the 2015, this was all talk about everything. The Marriott, I think Norton may have even been protesting outside the Marriott to say they would turn it into a hospital. Everything was corrupt. Hope Canal was corrupt. The airport project was corrupt. And that they then corruptly changed it from a new airport, which we left, to a rehabilitation project. So we got the old airport rehabilitated when the contract that we signed was to build a massive new terminal building, pulling down the old structure. That would have been a modern building now there. They changed it from that. Patterson did that and changed it into a rehabilitation of the old structure, working with the same Chinese company that you would recall, that came to the parliament with them when they were in opposition. I don't even want to go down that route now. So for Norton, they have a track record on this matter. They have a track record of corruption. So the allegations have started again. But we're not dealing with allegations when we talk about these two persons. One actually had the blank checks written, and the other actually stole the money from Chronicle. So they did interviews among themselves, and they talk about gold smuggling and about police, about the police and how we are approaching corruption or allegations of corruption in the police force. These were the main issues that they talk about. So Norton said that they left a code of conduct for ministers, legislated a code of conduct. Then how, if you left this code of conduct, you had ministers, several of them, including Cathy Hughes that I've mentioned, approving contracts for her own company in her own ministry under her own signature. She's signing approving contract for the company that she owns. How come that happened? Where was this code of conduct? What consequences did Cathy Hughes face if you had this code of conduct? So they want to dupe us to say they legislated against certain types of behavior. But he didn't say that you already had a Integrity Commission Act and a commission in place where people had to submit their statements of income and asset to the commission on a yearly basis, that for 3 years under APNU they didn't submit, breached the law and did not submit. Convenient too. Talk about how, we legislated. This is what Norton said. We legislated a code of conduct. We left them a code of conduct. Pure nonsense. Secondly, he talked about the police and corruption in the police force and how you need an external agency to investigate this. This is the same person who was against any external body looking at the elections. They're opposed to any external group looking at elections in Guyana. But he wants the police force, the allegations of corruption, to be done by an external body. Now, I have here the, an article from the Starbuck News on June 26, 2019. And it says, crime chief placed on leave pending corruption probe, 2019. Now, Lyndon Alves was sent on leave. This is what it says. Crime chief Lyndon Alves has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of an investigation into the recent exposure of a network of alleged corruption in the Guyana police force. Placed on leave. Now this was the man, remember President Granger, when he selected the top leaders, the one Indo-Guyanese who was acting there then as commissioner of police, he didn't choose him. Chose a number of other people, the commissioner and 4 deputies. And he said he's choosing people who are not unbribable. That was President Granger. On the 24th of May of 2019, he conferred the Discipline Services Medal on Mr. Alves. And then a month later, he was sent on leave for an alleged corruption network. Nobody could confirm. If you read the article, I don't want to go on too long. If you read the article, nobody was saying who sent him on leave in the police force, but he was sent on leave. A month later, the commissioner of police said he'd been cleared of all wrongdoing. And guess who investigated him? The Office of Professional Responsibility. I didn't hear about FBI. I didn't hear about external agencies. In this case, we got SOCU to do it. That was set up by the law to do that. When in relation to Brutus, there are allegations of corruption against Brutus. He's on leave, and SOCU has been ordered to do the investigation by the government. In this case, it was done internally. This is the duplicity of people like Norton. They did it through the OPR and then cleared the person, and he went back to work. So they would have you believe that this was different. If every time we have to build local institutions, and I can say to you that at SOCU, there'd be no pressure by anyone in the police force because the president himself is looking into this matter and all these matters. There'll be no pressure by anyone internally to alter the course of this investigation or any other investigation of malpractices anywhere in the country or in the police force. But having said that, we don't want to vilify policemen too, because somehow people believe it's an open season on policemen. A lot of them do a great job, and they're hard-working people serving this country. And we must not, for the purpose of politics or for ratings or to get a good newspaper article, vilify people in the police force. And sometimes that is what you see. What Robson Ben said was an honest issue. Didn't mean to vilify policemen all over the place. He said, you know, we have concerns about procurement, as we have in many other places. I've been speaking about this. And we didn't sweep it under the carpet. Here is a minister expressing a concern to the policemen themselves. And we have done so here. It wouldn't have been done in a closed-door room with 3 persons. The minister did it openly because within this government, the That is how we address these matters. And the people have to be mature enough, policemen and the society, to say you can openly discuss these things without vilifying all the policemen who are there and saying, oh, they all engage in procurement fraud or corruption. The president already spoke. Some people may spoke about jewelry and all of that nonsense. I see that coming out. But people can express themselves freely here. Once they stick with the code of conduct in the police force and the requirement for proper uniform, we don't live in a caliphate or a repressive, tyrannical society. People do their job. We want people to get wealthier and grow every Guyanese, whether it's by acquiring a house lot, a home, a car, whatever. A scholarship, we want people to grow and to freely express themselves. But suddenly a major vilification of policemen, but also somehow saying, oh, this is a government cover-up. Did you ever hear on the APNU a minister expressing to his officers and others, we got to work within this force to make sure our image is pristine? It was not an accusation. It was bringing an issue that we've been speaking about at the national level to everybody. Why should we not explore these things openly as a country? And the willingness of a government to explore this openly should be commended. And now we have a capability to investigate people and an impartial capability right here. They want to, in their period, they did it, and even worse, they cover up, all the cover up. Because we have a ton, I didn't give you the details about what happened in a small group within the police force in that period. People used to share a ton of things at the leader of the opposition office. If you go back, I released several documents as leader of the opposition, documents showing corruption. I released it in opposition, and they did nothing about it. Here, this government, there are accusations, we're investigating it, and we're not doing it through OPR, we're doing it through SOCU. So this approach is just creating an issue for them to speak about, we're covering up this matter and vilifying policemen in the whole issue. You don't hear them speak anything about, I've looked through the reports that came to APNU now recently by the investigative arms of this government that went to APNU about gold smuggling, including a report on the people who were caught taking the chains out the airport. That same individual who is the kingpin of the operation was identified on the APNU in a report, and nothing happened. But now that we're digging back into it because they'll be charged for money laundering, we found the report there. They knew of this. About a year ago, maybe 6 months ago or so, I said to you, we're paying serious attention to gold smuggling, because when the issue of a decline in declarations came about, the president had several meetings with participants in the sector and read the Riot Act to them. And we said here that there'll be consequences to people. People could lose their permits to mine if we can trace them directly to these illegal activities. And that we're concerned that there may be rings operating in Guyana that are siphoning off the gold or smuggling the gold out. The gold out. I said to you 6 months ago, long before the Mohammed issue came about, that there are investigations going on. I've seen the last few days, one of the major rings that involved Chinese national that was buying a lot of the gold and smuggling this gold out, particularly to Suriname, that the ring has been busted out of that undercover work that's been going on for a while. Look how much it got in the newspapers. Look, these are the stories written. No, nothing about it. But this is a major ring, and they caught people. It was operating in some of the hotels. They were buying large quantities of gold and shipping this gold out of the country. Wanted bulletins have been issued for many of them. We believe it was a form of money laundering, but also gold smuggling. And the undercover operation has started yielding the individuals now. And it's a major, major operation that has gone on for nearly 6 months. But it goes without much notice in the newspapers because it doesn't support the narrative that this government has been looking into all of these issues. One, the ring smuggling, the gold out to New York that they caught, and it was through undercover operations that happened too, because nobody would have known that they had this gold coated with silver that they were taking out with these big chains and basically tons of gold taken out through this method. That had to come through investigative work. That ring was busted, and they're facing criminal procedures now through and money laundering. A second ring has been busted here. We've written to the US to give us all the details about the 10,000 kilograms of gold that they claim that the Mohammeds smuggled out of this country. We've asked them for all the details so we can take action on that matter, because we don't have the information. So we're waiting the information from the US so we can take action on it. All of these matters were there on the government's desk before. And this is how we have approached it. So they can go. Norton and Sherrod Duncan talks about this, but they don't have any interest in highlighting all of this. How the government has approached the allegations of corruption in the procurement system in the police force. We have approached it in a professional manner, and there's a government agency dedicated to this, to investigation, and they'll be investigating this matter, and there'll be no cover-up. And secondly, how we are approaching this whole issue with gold smuggling. Those were the two main things that they spoke of at the press conference. Not the press conference, the interview, Sherrod Duncan and Norton. But one other issue that Norton, I think, allowed to slip was the issue about they've complained to the diplomatic community that the government is linked up with drug dealers. So I think he let it slip out. So I had not intended to speak about this matter. But he thinks we're unaware of what the complaints have been. We have a robust engagement with the diplomatic community, and we have good relations with countries. And some of the people that they complain to every time there is a mission that comes in this country, or when they meet some of the diplomats here, they complain, oh, the PPP is linked up with drug dealers, that's one. Well, they did that in the period running up to 2015, that we're in the pocket of the drug dealers. So much so that a US report came out that we had given Roger Khan a large tract of forest land as a government. And it was in one of the US drug reports. We were surprised as to where this came from. So we asked the US government. We said, it's not true, you should correct the report. And they said, well, the report is out, it's hard to correct. And guess how we found out who told them this? You had WikiLeaks. And then the cables and the correspondence from the embassy here up to Washington named the individual who told them this. And guess who he was? One of the PNCR members. That is what they were doing then. Lying, vilifying the government quietly so that it will get into the US circles. Oh, we're linked, we gave Roger Khan this large tract of forested land, which was not true, was a lie, blatant lie. We would have never found out who did this unless you had WikiLeaks. So they're back at this again. I think this worked well for them in that period. So they're back at this again, every mission that comes out. And Norton said it. He said, oh, we are complaining to the diplomatic community that this government is linked to the drug dealers and the underworld. But you have a US presence here now in the form of the DEA, and they know about the collaboration that we have on these matters. But that's not the only thing they talk about. So every time they meet these diplomats, they have a standard script. Who meets the diplomat, they talk about, we're raiding the sovereign wealth fund. So imagine the sovereign wealth fund under APNU that they pass after the no confidence motion, that is the Natural Resources Fund, had a direct charge from the government on the sovereign wealth fund. So you didn't have to go through the appropriation process through Parliament. You could have charged bills directly to the fund, not transparent. We removed that. Every cent spent on now oil money has to go through the Parliament of Guyana. Every single cent. And it can't be charged against the sovereign wealth fund. It has to be charged against the money that comes to the budget. The sovereign wealth fund, whatever remains there, can only be invested into the future by a board, not by the Minister of Finance any longer, which we changed, but by a board of directors headed by Major General retired Joe Singh. A board with international participants there. I think even the UK. Yes. So this is what's done there. Secondly, we changed the law about receipts into the fund. We said, because remember, they didn't put the 18 million into the fund. The 18 million signing bonus. Jordan said he thought it was a gift to the government of Guyana. They hid it from the consolidated fund and from the balance sheet of the central bank. So it existed in no man's land. Couldn't be audited by the Auditor General because it's not part of the consolidated fund and it's not part of the central bank balance sheet. So again, it would miss the audit process there. Kept it outside. We filed a case in the court for it to be transferred into the consolidated fund. They made some excuses, all sorts of excuses. I don't want to go into, I'm talking too much about that because you can read the history of it, but please read the history of it. So now what did we change it to? 100 times I've said this. We now have a tougher law than any country in the world, including the United States and maybe Europe, about any sovereign wealth fund in a European country. And they're complaining to those ambassadors and well, not ambassadors, the diplomats from these countries and representatives about the sovereign wealth fund. Every cent that goes into the fund has to be gazetted and notified to the parliament within 3 months of receipt, or else the Minister of Finance can go to jail for 10 years. Which country in the world has done that? And they complain about it. We have a clear formula for transfer from the sovereign wealth fund to the budget. So, and every cent has to be appropriated. One of the strongest sovereign wealth funds in terms of transparency in the world. And they complain about that too. But people, and the next thing they complain about is inflation. Oh, inflation is high. Imagine complaining to Western diplomats about inflation when the inflation in those countries might far outstrip ours. Somehow, oh, there's high inflation. What else they complain about? Oh, they complain about, corruption. Corruption, government officials. The same people who go there want people to forget, the same diplomats to forget that there was no procurement system under APNU, and we've demonstrated that. No procurement system, that they did not submit although there's an integrity commission law, they didn't submit their statements of income and asset to the integrity commission, that several ministers from their government are now charged for corrupt activities. So they take a couple of issues and make it the prevailing condition. We have strengthened our procurement system, and we keep strengthening it. And you've heard me over the past several weeks about how we're strengthening it even at the ground level to ensure that more people get work, the contractors, but it's done transparently. Because we found in some cases that people who are related come up with 2-3 companies they can get in a hidden fashion, that they get, because nobody knows who the companies are, they get more work, and then people who know about this from the regions, etc., they think somehow it's a government policy to do this. We have found some public officers who have not declared their interests, who are getting a bidding in some of the regions, etc. So someone, an engineer, might be working in a department there, and they're also bidding in contracts. We're cleaning all of that out, because there's a willingness to do that and to talk about it. You ever hear APNU in the 5 years talk about this? Although it was major. So we're on this. I came from Essequibo Coast, doing that exactly on the ground. The president went to Region 3, did exactly the same thing. Ashni Singh and I, we are going to 5 and 6 next week to clean up all of these lists, but also to talk to the procurement entities, etc., because we are laying the government line down back, and to make sure that there's a full compliance with the laws, the Procurement Act and the regulation. Compliance. And I said before, a lot of training will be done. So that's what they complain to the diplomatic community about. And then finally, that we're only giving our supporters benefits here. You're giving our supporters more benefit. Afro-Guyanese are not getting anything from this government. Don't enjoy the progress. If you people know too, the diplomats, some of them laugh at these people. when they tell us about it, because they're here and they know what's going on. And they know that they will come with a script. So whoever they meet, this is the script. They go with these talking points. And they would say, like what Nigel Hughes did, and I explained a couple of weeks ago. He'd go with something and say, look at GWI here, but false information. A lot of that is submitted. A lot of false information. And so people laugh at them, but they have a standard script. So what Norton said about their complaining to the diplomats, I think he didn't realize I didn't want to speak much about it, because a lot of the diplomats don't want you to talk about it, because it's supposed to be private and confidential, what they say. But he opened the door. He said, we complain. So this is why they complain. If you look at equity in distribution of assets, I've spoken to US congressmen too, a lot of them, African American congressmen, who complain more about inequity in the United States of America than we have here. We've pointed out. So in Guyana's case, we see our people reflected in every level, in the judiciary, in the legislative branch of government, and the executive branch. It's multi-ethnic. If you look at the benefits, the house lots, pension, children, help to the children, almost these are across the board initiatives. You look at roads being done, so they will go to Indo-Guyanese village and show all the roads done. But they wouldn't go to Safai and see that we're doing almost all the roads in Safai or in, say, South Romvelt, etc. Every community benefits. So in terms of equity in distribution of resources, we have a greater, you complain to some people where in their own countries there's greater inequity. And you think that people don't know this. So we're not going to be on the defensive with our policies, because our policies are far-reaching and they include all of our people. And their propaganda that they go and peddle at these places, the standard list, I could send it over to one of the embassies long before they meet the people, and that would be the playlist that they go from. I can send the topics that they will talk about with a healthy dose of lying. So Norton just let the cat out the bag, what they complain about. Notice they want external intervention in everything on these matters, but they would not utilize the Ethnic Relations Commission. They wouldn't utilize that. They want external intervention on every one of these areas, but they would not want it on elections-related matters. So Norton, I think he spoke out of turn there. I saw Nigel Hughes, he wanted an external investigation into the police too. He called for it. I wonder if we should have an external investigation into when he removed the tape from the gas station when the Hamilton was killed. We should have an external investigation into that too. Or when the Agricola issue took place, when people were beaten on the road and all of that. What role he had in that? Or when it was fabricated that they had some guy who saw the police shooting up on some roof, etc. A long list. We should have external investigations into these matters too. But of course, double standards. Like they have the double standard again. Imagine the Starbuck News writing to ask whether a member of the PPC, Joel Bagwandin, who said he's not going to work for Exxon anymore, whether he's in a conflict of interest situation. And I saw the Public Procurement Commission wrote back saying that he recuses himself when there is anything to do with ExxonMobil. So that's a clear case. They raised it. They have a right to raise it. The Starbuck News reporter. But for weeks we've been talking about Diane Rajkumar, who campaigned with Nigel Hughes, who is now an executive member of the AFC, and she's a member of the PPC. And Patterson has made several complaints to the PPC. Now he is the chairman of the party, I think, the AFC. So does she recuse herself when any issues come up there that involve anything from the AFC? In fact, you have a politician now, a full-fledged practicing politician in the leadership of a party who is sitting on the PPC. Do you think anybody will get a fair hearing there? They will try to make it all about corruption because our bosses, our leaders, are saying everything about the PPP is corrupt. So what position do you think they will take there? But how come the Starbuck News didn't write asking about this conflict of interest? It's been in the public domain because it's about if it's against the PPP, it's open season. Once it's about APNU, look at the double standard again to the newspapers, including the Starbuck News. On the question of conflict of interest with Nigel Hughes, they sought to equate it somehow with our move so somehow we are helping Exxon too because we want earlier production and a ramp up in production. We've explained that 100 times. He gets a free pass. You just imagine if a PPP person had done this, a leader of our party who says, right, a general secretary of the PPP who says, you know, I will only if I become president. I will only then resign from ExxonMobil. But I can be on the payroll whilst being the general secretary of the PPP, because what will happen, I'll set up a committee of other people to deal with this matter. And I will not speak on it. That is the equivalent. But where is that? Where is this big investigation about conflict of interest? And the TIGI would have been on our throat, and Red Shred, and the GHRA, all of these flunky organizations that support APNU. But where is their conscience now? Since they're the guardians of integrity in our society, silence we're met with. Uniform silence. And they will, I saw APNU issued a statement, everybody who hates the PPP join our coalition now. You will see them linking up, the APAs and the TIGIs and the Red Shred and the GHRA, all of them will link back. Ultimately, they are pro-PNC. These are not independent organizations. And no matter how many training seminars they end up at the embassies or wherever else, it don't change their political orientation and their duplicity. And we're not going to stop exposing this. Whoever likes it or whoever doesn't like it, that doesn't bother me or concern me as the general secretary of this party. I will expose it because these are politically aligned institutions. They've demonstrated this factually and through their track record. I can show that. I'm not going to do it now, but I can show that. So when they speak only in things favorable to the PNC or APNU. Where their conscience now? Everything they jump on conflict of interest. And I don't know, what about the gas to energy project? Nigel Hughes, I think it is his sister, maybe his sister, who is filing a case now against the gas to energy project. So where are all these conflicts playing out? And then I wonder, since we're on duplicity, again, so we are looking at, you should get a picture of what's happening, the people across this country. The PNC's malaise and their proclivity now to distort the 5 years and to try to pick a few things from our tenure in office and then blow them out of proportion. But let me give you a picture. So yesterday I saw something circulating. The Prime Minister went to Moruca Sub-District and visited a bridge there. And the bridge was opened by Patterson. Patterson promised this bridge would last 40 years, and the bridge started crumbling now. So they had a big thing, oh, it's not the bridge crumbling, it's only the approach to the bridge or whatever else. But that's it. So forget whether it's crumbling or not. You know? They make such a big issue of this one bridge. So in the post-election period, the APNU people were busy at it. These people in Moruca were ungrateful. We built this bridge here, and look, they didn't vote for us, the Amerindians there. The one bridge. So I just want to tell you, the first, you know already, the first 2 years, we had problems because of COVID. But what have we done just on roads and bridges? I just want to give you, so you then can compare. This man is making this big issue. That was their centerpiece of 5 years in office, this bridge that they built there. So on bridges and structures, since we got into office, we have awarded contracts for and started building on the Mahaika, the Mahaika to Georgetown Highway. It's about 39 kilometers and 118 structures that would have to be built and widened. Berbice, 60 kilometers have been awarded, but you have 99 structures on the 86 kilometers of the road, the 4-lane road that we're going to build in Berbice. The Ogle, 11.2 kilometers of road, the bypass, 40 structures. The Mandela to Busby Dam, 22 kilometers, and also the connecting road to the main highway, and about 50 structures. Crane to the Harbor Bridge, about 8 kilometers and 5 or 6 structures. There are many roundabouts and so. So on those alone, we're going to be doing 312 bridges and structures that are already under implementation, and 140 kilometers of 4-lane roads. That will transform how people, the time they save, etc. And this is all in about 4 years, but mainly about the 2 years of intense work in the post-COVID period. This guy is talking about his one bridge in Moruca. Now, 140 kilometers of 4-lane roads. How much did they do in the APNU period? The East Coast was the only one, and guess what? We left that contract. They completed it. Not a single 4-lane road that they did. Although they knew that we needed this because of the growth in traffic. If you don't have this, it slows down economic growth, and it will create hardships for people. Just imagine being stuck on one of these roads for 2-3 hours. That's what we're trying to avoid, so better quality of life for our people. Where do you hear about this? This is because of intense work that we've done. And they're proud to talk about this, and now the bridge is crumbling. That's one structure they did. But that's not all. since that is a hinterland bridge, on the road from Letem to Linden, there are 46 structures. We awarded 45 already, with the exception of the Kuruk-Pukari Bridge, and that are under construction that would allow international highway traffic to come once completed. International standards. That's under contract. That's another 45 bridges there. In Wismar, we're doing a 4-lane bridge across the river, awarded already in the Linden area for $36 million. Here, we're doing a 3 kilometers bridge for $261 million. There'll be about 14, 15 stories at the top of the bridge. That's the height. That would allow us to use the river. All of that in 4 years. Where does this balance come from? Why don't they talk about that? That's a government working. Unlike this anemic government that we had in the past that was satisfied with, oh, we open a bridge, big ceremony in Moruca alone. And then it would last 40 years of crumbling already. Balance there. So we get penalized for working harder. At one stage, the same TIGI and Stabrook and all the others were saying, oh, the government moving too fast. Our people need that. They need us to move fast. We're not a sleepy government. They need us to move fast. And so much more is being done. A lot more, significantly more, but it's all consistent with a vision. And we're not only doing that, so Norton talks about infrastructure, we're also paying attention to raising wages, $90 billion more in the public sector since we got in. I gave you the printout so you could carry it to see which sectors. Spending $200 billion more on housing development, giving our children, pensioners, public assistance more money. We're doing all of that too at the same time. And investing in our Amerindian communities, making sure that people right across Guyana have jobs, like 15,000 people more jobs, upgrading technical education, funding 50,000 scholarships. We're doing all of that together in a country. We didn't have a new public service when we took over. It's the same public service we're working with the same weaknesses and the same strengths. And so all of that gets suppressed in, their 2 pump stations are not completed on the time. They don't talk about the 19 that we're doing that would have 39 pumps and the Hope-like canals and the 60 cokers and all of that to safeguard this country, and it being funded from another source. That is what the focus has been. So we are not going to be on the defensive on these matters. In the period running up to 2015, I think we didn't pay enough attention to it. So we allow this to resonate. We allow it to resonate, and that's what they're hoping to rekindle. That's why they go to the external agencies to complain, they're spending too much money from the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Imagine Norton saying, time of plenty, etc. We pointed it out. Even a school child knows now that only 30% of the budget is funded from oil money. But you think, all of this is oil money that they didn't have, that is why they couldn't do better. They had $90-something billion more of taxes. $90-something billion more of taxes. Where did they choose to spend the money? Not on infrastructure, not on building things you can see. Dietary increase. We bought more vehicles for the government people. We've rented over $1 billion more of buildings for government officials. We got out of a lot of those as soon as we got into office. It was a racket. You remember the AFC, and in the public domain, and the leaks that came out, that they promised people to rent buildings from them as a contribution back, inflating the cost of the rental because of contributions they made in the past. Inflating the price, over $1 billion increase in rentals, all of these things. That's where they choose to spend the money. Ministers were flying into the hinterland all the time on vacation and all that sort of stuff. They didn't choose, not that they had no money, they choose the things to spend it on. Different things to spend it on, not back on investing in people. So I just had to point out a number of issues where they had significant amount of double standards. I saw last week, or Elson Lowe, what was that? After my press conference, he had the name, so he said the bidding round failed because of no seismic and strict contract terms. Now, it's a brain-dead sort of people. I said that at the beginning. When we went out to auction, I said, we've chosen an option to auction these blocks as is, where it is. We know we have limitations because we don't have seismic. It's not something we hid. We know that if you don't have seismic studies, you may get less bids, or maybe bids that are not, that ultimately you may not be able to conclude with. We knew that at the beginning. Secondly, we said we were going to change the two things we will do before we go to the bid. We will change the 1986 law that was there in APNU period, and throughout the 5 years that they managed the oil and gas sector using a 1986 law, to a modern one that expanded the tools available to the government to manage the sector in a modern way. We did that, and we said we are going to change the terms of the PSA, which we did too before we went out. Two seminal changes that were made and was in line with what civil society and others were calling for, and that we had promised in the pre-election period to change the PSA and to change also the law. We did both things. He ignored all of that they couldn't get accomplished in 5 years. We did that. He complains now that the PSA was too strict. I said already that here that we may have problems with the bids because the non-fiscal elements we have had complaints about, but we're not changing the fiscal elements. We think a 10% royalty for new development, not a 2%, is fair. And we think a 10% corporate tax is also fair. And a 65% instead of 75% cost recovery is fair. We did that, and we said we're not changing that. Now Elson Lowe complains, oh, we had too much strict contract terms. These are the same people who say they want to tighten contract terms. They say the bid failed because this government was too stingy. It had too strict contract terms. How more contradictory can you get? And it's not like new information. Every week we say this. We explore this issue openly, unlike what they did in 5 years. And so I noticed Norton is not saying much. They probably put him to talk about it. And then he said the cap in stock. Again, somehow implying that you don't need the guarantee anymore. And I think that has been exposed enough. People thought that he is talking nonsense. He didn't know what you were saying, because that is, in addition to the guarantees and the insurance, we had a requirement that a cap and stock will be in the country to be deployed immediately. In the older environmental permits, it said a cap in stock must be, you have to have a subscription. But when we look at the subscription, it will take several days for it to get to Guyana, because you can come from the US or Brazil or those places where they have cap in stock. There's none in the region. So even if you have a subscription and say you have bad weather and all of that stuff, or you can't land it, it can't happen. So we said, no, no, no. You have to have this in country. So if a well blows, we can deploy immediately. And it is in their interest to deploy immediately, and ours, because since they would be responsible for the cost of any spill, totally, then the ExxonMobil would have an interest in deploying the cap in stock to plug the leak immediately. So it's in country now and should be deployed immediately. This guy thinks that this will, somehow this is in contradiction. We'd give up on the guarantees and stuff. They're two different things. And so you heard what I said about the Adams guy when he talked about, he signed the permit, but didn't ask for a cap in stock to be in country. He could have asked for that at the beginning. Now we made that change. It's here in the country now and can be deployed immediately because it's available to us now, rather than have a subscription to it and then you would have to sail it in. If we have some problem with a well now, you'd have to look around the world, get it, start sailing it into Guyana, which may take several days and all of that stuff. And that has become a major issue. I'm not going to go through many other issues here. Thank you.
Daybreak News. Just 3 questions I have. Some of the opposition supporters and hardcore supporters have expressed their dissatisfaction with the PNC now having what can only be seen as an all-black leadership. The leader, the chairman, and everybody else, up to the secretary, are all black. And the PNC has tried time and again to promote itself as an inclusive party, of which it now shows that it's not. What happens to persons of mixed race like myself and other peoples who sometimes in the midst of the political turmoil feel like outcast? Could the PPP, is the PPP going to continue to reassure people that there's a place and there's a government for them?
Okay. So I saw the post, it was sent to me. And from a person who I think is solidly PNC, at least even up to the Congress of that party. And the post, he listed, I think, the top 5 positions and said they're all Afro-Guyanese, and said, basically, is this the image that we want to portray for our party as a national party? And then I looked at the AFC too, and the same issue, the top 3 posts, which is, yeah, just get that coffee for me, thanks. The top 3 posts are also held by 3 Afro-Guyanese in a party that said, campaign in the past that it's a multi-ethnic party and works for all of the people. And I've seen from that party at least circulating 2 resignations from the AFC pointing this out and saying, when we joined the AFC, we thought it was a multi-ethnic party. It's no longer that. So you're right about people, Guyanese, of Indo-Guyanese, Amerindian Guyanese, people of mixed ancestry, that they have a lot of misgivings. And that this seems to be a party that is captured by racist cabals. Racist cabals. I doubt whether even Afro-Guyanese will find a comfortable place in that party, apart from the revulsion that they should feel at this. Because this party has demonstrated in the past that even ordinary Afro-Guyanese cannot get any help from them. And I just can give you the example of Linden again, a stronghold of the PNC. In the 5 years that they were there, no housing for anyone, no housing scheme developed, no housing developed. And then guess who got the land? Amanza and 2 members of our family got land there. Minister of Finance published their names in the official gazette. Some even after they lost the elections, they collected prime pieces of land, huge pieces too. The Figueroas, a lot of other politically connected people. So it's elitist and only for politically connected. Jordan, the Minister of Finance, there are some people who live, I think he lives in some Cane View or something, a road there in South Rumveld, and his neighbors got land in Linden. And the people of Linden did not get a single house lot. So they campaign, and if you go to them all the time, you listen to the Deron Adams and the others, they only the race line they push, all of the other time. PPP is racist, etc. But they had 5 years, not a single house lot. Secondly, we had a call center that was working there. They shut it down when they got into office. Now we are trying to get people employed there. Not much employment for people in that region too, under the 5 years of APNU. We now have about 1,200 part-time workers. They try to run that down. They try to get to say, oh, we don't want that. We want full-time jobs in Linden. That is what APNU and the others saying, Norton and the others saying. They didn't even think about a part-time job for people, much less anything, but they now oppose that. So where did ordinary Afro-Guyanese get any help from them? Look at the contractors now. If you look at the small contractors, you have hundreds of Afro-Guyanese small contractors who are benefiting from small contracts. You ask them about it. They destroyed many of the big contractors too. You ask Cummins how much work he got, or Courtney Ben, or one of the big contractors, black contractors. They are elitist party. And both, so it's not just Afro-Guyanese, but the cabals, the racist cabals have now controlled these 2 parties. That's why they have no shame to put up that kind of structure. And they would appeal only, that's what we say, only to race. So who in Guyana, which Guyanese that wants to see our country move forward would want to, with full conscience, go into that party? You're not going to get help if you're ordinary Afro-Guyanese. And secondly, it's not a national party. Can't work for a thing. And as you said, mixed people too. You don't have a place there, or any other race for that matter. It's ridiculous. They're just a racist cabals that have controlled these 2 parties. And so it's not a good thing for people where our country is going. They've given up any pretense at anything else. They've given up all the pretense. And so when they go to complain to the diplomats again, because they love to talk about diversity You know, Nigel, you say, oh, diversity on the Constitutional Reform Commission, although our side is diverse, their side is not diverse, but he says it. I wish that the parties, the diplomats say, what about diversity in your leadership? Don't you think that anybody else is capable? So, yeah, it's not a good sign for a country. They've given up any pretense to work across the board and to work for Guyana. They're working for themselves now.
A great part of the government's ability, largest part of the government's ability to deliver on its mandate, the promises made to the people, has been the civil servants. So the civil servants are professionals that are carrying out the narrative of the government.
Yeah.
Recently, opposition provocateurs who disguise as influencers on social media have been attacking professionals, and the government seem unwilling to represent their employees. The head of the person who drives the government's initiative on development through housing, Emprotab, these are professionals, and because of the political mayhem, they are personally attacked. Doesn't the government see a need? Let me break down. So there are attacks like these people are corrupt. Is the government investigating these people for corruption? If it's not so, why doesn't the government come to represent? They're professionals. They don't have the mechanism to represent themselves. And they're attacked. They got families. And
Yes.
they are mandated with care. Now the government's job, and as a result of that, they're being attacked. What does the government plan to do about that?
So we have to be careful as a government, because if they feel that the government acts only on the lies that they tell, then they will tell more lies to get our attention, all of our attention drawn to that, and we will forget that we were elected to fulfill some promises that we made to the people of this country that are in our manifesto. And we would forget that we have to, on a daily basis, work for the tens of thousands of Guyanese who need the full attention of the government focused on their issues. If you had to run behind every lie that they tell, and a substantial, they may get an element, just a small bit of it is factual, and they distort it and put a ton of lies there. But every day, if you start going after that, there'll be no room for this government to do anything else. That's what they want. It will build their profiles, and then secondly, you're distracted. You start feeding on yourself. We can't do the roads, the water supplies, and fix the electricity or whatever else that people need. So you have to be very, very careful in government that you don't get led by the nose, because if I tell a lie and you're listening to it, or I tell some half-truth, so there may be an element of truth within what you tell, so it resonates. Then, if I could do that all the time and you start responding to me, I'll be telling every day a few more lies, because you're paying attention to my lies and you wouldn't be able to do anything in your life. And we're not getting caught in that trap. So if you do have evidence of corruption, we will take that seriously. And we look at a lot of we do look at some of the allegations, and they're so outrageous that you then start saying, is it worth it to every day pay attention to this? So we don't want to be distracted down that route, but the public officers, they have to, if they're caught, any public officer caught now with any act of corruption, they don't have any room to wriggle out of it. We will ensure that they're fully investigated. I told you about the security companies. There are about 8,000 people out there who are employed through security companies that supply these services to the government of Guyana, that we found that they were not paying the NIS. We launched the investigation. I have the report. They've been given time. Some of them have to pay $60 million for the back year of NIS. And they have to pay it, or it would be sent to the police force, and they're not going to get any contract again. The contracts would be canceled. Some of them over $60 million they have to pay that they thought were profits, that they were not paying the people NIS. They all have to clear up. They're scrambling now, all of them. And we're going through every one, and we're going to ensure that once I'm done with this part of it, that they're observing the minimum wage for the people, and two, that they're also providing for every location the individual the services. Because we believe some of them may not be supplying the services, but they get paid for. A total investigation that would affect thousands of people and change the lives of many of those people. Every time we go to the regions, they complain, oh, I felt sick, I can't get my NIS, this company didn't submit my NIS. That's changing now. It's going to change before the next month or two. All of them have to comply, and they're busy scrambling to comply. Some have to borrow to comply, or they'd face consequences. We made that clear at the beginning. So we are looking into a lot of these issues now when we're on the ground.
Good afternoon, sir. Nasser Williams, Skytrue News.
Yeah.
Can you say what other benefits do Guyanese enjoy from foreign direct investments in the mining sector outside of the royalties and the taxes where applicable?
So it's mainly three things. You get their royalty, well, as you just said, the taxes, and you get the employment opportunities. And if they have partnerships, then you get some income. If they have partnerships with Guyanese companies, you get income. So those are the four things anywhere in the world you would find from foreign direct investment.
Can you say at what price is the cap and stack that we currently have in the country? Can you say at what price is being leased?
How much?
The subscription fee.
I don't know the price. I don't know the price. The price.
ExxonMobil has said that production is paused at Liza 2 to hook up the gas pipeline. Can you say what does this mean for Guyana?
I dealt with that issue before, and they dealt with it themselves about when the question came up that they would lose, production, and they said they would do it it has to be done. You have to hook up the pipeline to the FPSOs, so that the gas could come down the pipeline. They explained that they will do that. They will test the pipeline, and then they would cap it and I think fill it with nitrogen until it's connected to the completed NGL facility and the power plant. They explained further that they will utilize the two weeks or so that would be necessary to do that, to do some of the maintenance that they would have had otherwise have to do. So that it's not a loss of production, it's just deferred a bit further. So that was explained fully by the company. But it's necessary. You have to hook the pipeline up to these entities. And whatever the cost of it, it has to be done. I'm looking at the project itself, the completion of the project, which will be a boon to us, all of us in Guyana. Because every day we have to talk about blackouts and all of that stuff and not enough power in the system because of what happened in the past. Happened to kill the hydro. They make no investments in the 5 years. We're running on these old units so far, nothing. They don't have even a vision. They don't want to kill this one too, the gas to energy project. They want to even kill that one too. But they want cheap electricity and they want stable supply. Like you can achieve those without having a project. So I'm just focused on this getting done, completed.
An update on the documents for the gas to shore project. Can you say when this will be made public?
We have a process where there are tons of documents that they would show. A lot went through public process, like the environmental permits and all of that. So we've asked them to look at everything and to take out the proprietary parts of the documents, and then the others would be made available, like in any commercial transaction. At the end of the project, people will see all that is there, and you know in principle what their costs are because they've been made public. I told you already, the public tender, there was a public tender for the control facility. You can check how much it was awarded for. The tender for the evacuation of the power and the substations, you can find out how much that costs. A tender for the power plant and the NGL facility, that figure is known to the public, $761 million, and then the pipeline project. So it is, all the costs are known in these areas, barring any escalation in costs, but we're not going to be at this stage giving proprietary document. They have no desire to read it. Let me give you an example. A partisan wouldn't read anything. I was in Parliament and in the 2015 period, and they were talking something about a miler in their launch in 2016. And then I realized they didn't read anything. To say that there is a $2 billion debt on a miler. They were given by Ramatara government all of the documents, stacks and stacks of documents, everything, design, everything. But that didn't matter. They chose to distort and kill the project, which is what they're trying to do now, distort and kill. All the documents, we've made available the environmental permits that everybody didn't make available. What's a big deal now? They have it in the public domain. They're not going to use it, because if they use it, they will show that they made a mess in the past, or even the license for the other projects. So what they did up to recently, earlier this year in the budget debate, the same partisan, in the face of receiving all the documents, went to the parliament, and I think Ashni Singh needs to ask that he withdraw this. I should talk to him about it and correct himself. Well, with the lies that he told to the parliament. He said the power from the Amila project was 30 cents per kilowatt hour, when it was 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Lied in this year, 2024, after being in receipt of every document in the pre-2015 period, and then had the documents available in the 5 years they were there. Now, in 2024, saying that the cost per kilowatt hour was 30 US cents per kilowatt hour, higher than what we're generating now. We're using fossil fuel. A blatant lie. Do you think partisan cared about any technical studies? You think he cares about technical studies? He wants to lie all the time. They'll find one word in a whole agreement and say, oh, we disagree with this word here. Kaichor knows that very well. Every week I see the headlines about what I say. It gets a little twist about what I say. It's a lie. We're not pandering to these people. Whatever we've done is in the public domain. At least we've gone to tender for all of these elements. All of the three components of the four major components, which is the NGL facility, the power plant, the evacuation of the power through the transmission main, and the control center. And the part with Exxon about the pipeline, that's been in the public domain. They went to tender about this, but we had to to give our approval for the shortlist. So it's run openly, transparently. The project will yield the benefits, the numbers are known. They are trying to make politics out of it. They want to kill this project so that they can go to 2025 to say, oh, we still have a bad power situation, having consistently worked to undermine it. This is the nature of the government, or, well, of the past government and this current opposition. And I don't know what Nigel Hughes will say on that now, because whether he will tell his MPs how to vote on it. Exxon may call him and tell him, you know, you better don't say too much about this one, because you're working for us, you're on our payroll. And he may have to say to his people, don't raise these issues in Parliament.
Another issue, sir. In some cases, we come here, we ask questions, and you direct us to the oil minister.
By the way, you should ask Nigel Hughes if he would release all of the payments that he has received from Exxon so far to see whether it's payment for legal services or political contributions. Okay, that would be great. Yeah, that would be great. And he should release it, all of that.
Sir, in some
That is form, yes.
In some cases,
And whether in the 5 years, of APNU, when we left a draft to end the monopoly on telecommunications, a draft law that they passed at the beginning. As soon as they got into office, they took the old draft and passed it. And they argued that they would end the monopoly instantaneously because they wanted to expand telecommunication services in 2015. That was one of their promises. That's why they didn't do it in the 5 years. They passed the law. We got in August, and by September or October, using the same law, we ended the monopoly on telecommunications. That whether any member of the Hughes family was working for GT&T in that period, or received any payments from GT&T in that period when the minister who was supposed to end the monopoly was Cathy Hughes. I'm very interested in that question being put to him, and why they didn't end the monopoly. That's a very something I've been seeking answers to for a very long time. I don't know why they didn't do it after promising in their manifesto they would end it. In fact, they put a tax on the data. After promising to make data cheaper and end the monopoly, they did that. So, be an interesting question. Since you were saying him, you have privileged access to him from the kite shore.
It's not privileged access. He asked a press conference.
Oh, okay. All right.
Finally, sir, in some cases, when we ask questions...
Maybe I could ask you a couple more questions that you could...
But I'm not on your payroll.
Oh, all right, okay. You're not on my payroll. Since you're the conscience of, not you, but kite shore, the conscience of the country. All right,
my final question.
Go on.
In some cases, when we ask questions here, you let us know that you're not involved in the day-to-day fine-tune running of the oil sector,
yes.
and you would direct us to Minister Bharrat. However, since our last conversation, the issue of him not responding to us has resurfaced, and it has come to a point where a colleague was even blocked. Now, if we don't get answers from him...
How you mean blocked?
Blocked on WhatsApp. And from directly calling him, because I have access to him, he responds to me, okay. And this particular person, there's no access. So I'm wondering
he just doesn't like the individual. It's not a reporter thing.
But I don't think his personal preferences should interfere with work.
No, but you know, it's a privilege to have the phone number. And you can't tell somebody...
Understood that it's a privilege, sir.
Yes,
but
you understand
if you can't answer us and we don't have access to him, what should we do next? Where do we go?
They should have regular briefings too. And I said this before. I think maybe once, even a quarter, they should have a briefing and then clear up a lot of the routine things. because I try to stay away from routine management of the sector. So I'm going to talk to him again about these issues, about maybe having, the last time he did a press conference, and so maybe it's time that the ministry have more press conferences to address those routine matters.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Shukwan Gill, DPI. On Monday in the Kaicher News, there is a headline attributed to Mr. Elson Lowe questioning the purpose of the investment committee in the Natural Resources Fund, and also indicating, according to him, that government plans to withdraw 98% of the earnings. First of all, can you speak to the real role of the investment committee in the NRF, and is it true that government is in fact looking to withdraw 98% of earnings from the sovereign wealth fund?
It's a formula-based withdrawal, and so what happens? You have maybe a few $100 million in the fund. They earn quite a bit of money still from that. The interest on the Natural Resources Fund. So the interest that they earn from the Natural Resources Fund gets paid into that, or remains in the fund, excluding what comes to the government. So they have a few $100 million there. The formula that we have put in place will, a larger share of the resources come to the Treasury now, depending on, or would come to the Treasury depending on how much revenue we have. So it ramps up. It's on a sliding scale. So in a couple of years' time, when our revenue goes from, say, about 1.5 billion a year, or maybe just under 2 billion last year, to, say, $10 billion. Say, let's say $10 billion, maybe by 2027. 50% will be nearly safe. So that's about 4 or 5 billion US dollars a year. So as your money, the more you earn more, the percentage of how much you save for intergenerational equity goes up. So there will be substantial sums there. The law that we passed required an investment committee. So we have to name an investment committee. So even with a large amount or share of the NRF coming to the Treasury, it's still less than 30% of our budget, funding for our budget. So I don't know what point he is making about these people. The investment committee is a requirement of the law, and we are fulfilling the law now. And there was no fixed formula under their version of the act. The Minister of Finance ultimately decided how much must come. So every year, Jordan Wood, the same man who thought the 18 million was a gift, signing bonus, would have decided how much is going to come to the Treasury from the NRF. And they're comparing that with a formula-based transfer that has no role for the Minister of Finance. It's totally transparent. They focus on the small things deliberately and miss the huge change that enhances transparency in the use of the fund. And so that is how I'll answer.
One other issue, VP, you spoke about the increase that we've seen in goods, particularly fruits and vegetables, and what government is doing to reduce the cost of production. Yeah. One of the other issues that the public has raised concern about is the fact that from farmers there may be a number of middlemen that be hitching prices, and when it reaches to the consumer at the end, you have a massive increase. Is there anything that government can do on that matter?
In a free market, it's tough to do that, but it is something that where farmers should have greater access to the market. And you can help with, first of all, a guaranteed market for their produce. So farmers also have to increase their income. somehow people have this belief that we can raise all the salaries for everyone, but the farmers who work in the fields, they have to keep their prices constant and cheap all the time to supply others, the consumers, with cheap products all the time, as though they must take the hit every time. So we have to ensure farming is not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing. Many people, they see the produce, like some people, not here, not in Guyana, in some urban centers even want to know where eggs come from. They don't even know. In not big countries, the children don't even know that eggs come from an animal. They think it's manufactured. I've seen surveys like that done. Here in Guyana's case, we want to make sure that everyone prospers. And that is why we're focused intensely on making sure that they get the help also to increase their production, which could attenuate price increases, as I said before. We're doing something else, which is co-investing in facilities for processing. Because if the farmers can get a steady supply of goods or a steady market, they can ramp up their production. Because what happens now, you go through periodic periods. So if the price of cassava is high, almost everybody goes into cassava production. And the next crop, you have a large output and the prices fall, like what we have seen now. So the prices fall. But if you have a guarantee market for the cassava production, no matter how much you increase the production or the sale, then you can still make money. Then it will help to smooth out that. So I spoke last week about the cassava mill, say, in Region 3. Using in Blackbush Polder, we've co-invested to a processing plant, with a processing plant there that would buy the produce from the farmers to process. We're doing this all over the country, working with the farmers. But on the middlemen, I think if you have better transportation and faster transportation and the farmers are better organized, they can cut out the middlemen. I've spoken to farmers from across the river who normally come to Georgetown to sell, and the city council runs them out because they want bribes and harasses them all the time, but they come directly with their produce so that their prices would be minus the margin that a middleman would give them. And we've had, up to recently, we're trying to assist them, because when they come there, the constable would go down and harass them and they can't sell there, etc. So I guess your point is well taken, that we have to keep working to make sure that the farmers benefit more from any profits, because their margins, they're working in the fields and sometimes their margins are very, very slim, and they do the hard work, and the middlemen, they make most of the money. Or when it goes into the supermarket. So when you go into the supermarket, I've seen some prices at some of the fancy supermarkets would be 3 times the price that you can buy it from the farmers at. And all they do, they probably wash it and package some stuff a bit more. So giving people multiple access. The same thing with the Chinese, where there's been a complaint about Chinese investing in our country. And I said it last week, that we cannot allow people to outcompete Guyanese because of ripping off the taxes and all of that. And sometimes they do, and the GRA is having an intense look at that. However, sometimes the increase in selling points and supply drives the price down to consumers. And one person is, like the tools, I gave this example too, that if you look at tools that people buy, all the carpenters and the others are buying something called Total now. They're not buying the other brands because they said it's a good brand and the price is half of what they would have had to pay for another brand there. So you can't stop that. You just have to keep, if you're a businessman, you have to be nimble. We can't force people to buy your tools that you're selling at twice the price. So this is all in a market economy. And I guess the functioning of it is important to make sure that farmers get a better deal too.
In relation to the last question you entertained for Kaicho News, this government by far has been the most transparent government ever seen in Guyana. Even your previous administration has outdone your previous administration. Outside of transparency, is the government micromanaging how ministries or ministers do their business? In light of the fact Kaicho News reporters can be annoying, their publisher can be malicious and attack ministers. If a minister decides he is unwilling to deal with somebody as a result of attacks, it so happens you have entertained people and have developed a likeness over the years for this in addressing issues, blatant attacks, lies against you. Not everybody is capable of dealing with things as such. Is government micromanaging, or is government going to leave ministers to act within the capacity of transparency?
Yeah, I assume that we want to be available to everyone, and we have nothing to fear about our policies. We believe that if you can't defend the policies, then you shouldn't be implementing them. And therefore, every policy that we approve and is being implemented by the government goes towards two objectives, basically. One is it must pass the test of creating more goods and services to our people, and secondly, the policy must be sustainable. So you're never going to get us to go down the path of implementing something that is not sustainable in the long run for convenience. The opposition will do that, but we don't deal with it just for convenience. Sometimes it's even contentious, because taking a more long-term, sustainable approach don't bring immediate benefits, but they bring more sustained benefits in the future. And that is a key point of this government. Some people don't like that. So they don't like strong governments. The NGOs, some of these NGOs I called earlier, would love a weak PNC government, because then they run over, they have relevance there to continue their nonsense, and they all have a role to slow things down. So they have, it's not, they didn't focus on transparency. TIGI made excuses for the last government. Human rights was part of APNU. Imagine members of them were part on their some of the COIs, etc. They were getting money from APNU, getting paid, getting lucrative contracts for training and all sorts of things. The leadership of these bodies were getting a lot of lucrative contracts. Why do you think Anand Gulsaran, the conscience of our country, who wants to sue me to say, or he sued me to say he doesn't have integrity, was one who was willing to violate a law that he held sacred when he was Auditor General, which is that the Minister of Finance cannot approve an audit contract for the country. It has to be either approved by the Auditor General or the Public Accounts Committee. But he took contracts, audit contracts approved by the Minister without any tender. And that is the animal we're dealing with. So my point is that the ministers, you're right, that sometimes it's just, in this environment, a lot of the the media houses come, and they're not interested in the truth. They want a scandal, they want a story, even if you speak the truth and you inundate them with it. They don't recognize it, or their editors distort it, because they come with a political agenda, like the Kaichor News comes with a political agenda. So not everyone can handle that. And the personal vilification, some of us have grown a thick skin to the personal vilification. So you're right in that regard, and ministers may act. Sometimes they just get tired of it. But they still have to be out there for the people of this country who are listening to defend their policies and to speak about their policies. There's no excuse for that. And I believe the more we're out there talking about it, we can every week, like Kaichor and the others, every week they want me to end this press conference. They would love if I end this press conference. Every week you have some big editorials and all these peeping toms, etc. Jagdeo talking too much. Because every week I get a chance to comment on their lies and expose the lies. They don't want that. They want to leave a vacuum where nobody responds. And that's why, in spite of all that you said, we need to be out there at the ministerial level and at the political level to ensure we fight off these lies. And they're going to come even more rapidly, and bigger lies are going to come as we get closer to the elections.
Good afternoon, Kimal King for Oil Now. Vice President, August is expected to be parliamentary recess. You had said that the government plans to introduce draft oil spill legislation, so are you looking to pass it before recess?
It may be tough to pass it because we may not have the requisite period for notice, but I think we have enough time to table it. I express that concern. We don't want to also rush it through the parliament, because the other side would say that we are rushing it through the parliament, but we would have enough time to table it.
So when do you see yourself publishing the draft for comments?
Well, Exxon would love to give comments on this. I think they probably sent that question to Oil Now, and your editor asked you to do that. But we may solicit. I'm not sure that we will open this one up for comments, especially from the oil and gas companies, because they don't want legislation of this nature. Maybe open it only for comments from the locals.
When do you plan to make a decision on the firm to conduct the seismic? You had gotten some bids.
Okay. That has to go to cabinet once they evaluate the office that we have. And that would be only to shortlist, because it was just an expression of interest, and the financial proposals still have to come in.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, Sheriff from Belgrave Kaichor News. The CEO of Oh My Gold Company, Ms. Ellingham, Kaichor News report today that she said that your government is pushing her company to get into gold production quickly, or in other words, eager for them to get into gold. Can you say if this is true, and why is the government rushing for OMI to get into production? And if, when they do get into production, the government will show the same courtesy in being eager to release information on their production and how much Guyana is getting from its share and so forth?
Yeah, well, the agreement, as you have seen, you've asked for, and you have seen, because they're published now in the ministry, on the website of the Ministry of Finance. For all large-scale mines, we publish the agreement. So any new gold mine would have the same conditions as all of the others would have. It wouldn't be anything different. So that would be published. There's no proprietary information there, so it will be published. That's one. Two, I don't know, I don't like to comment on when Kaichor says what people have said. However, if there is any push to get production going, it's because the Omile gold mine has been in the development stage for a very, very long time. And we would like to see people move from proving reserves to actually producing gold. Because some people just sit on companies forever and they raise funds to prove the reserves, and they keep announcing how many ounces of gold in reserve there without getting into the real production. And it's only when you get to the production stage that the government gets its share of royalty and taxes, because the large scale mines have to pay both the royalty and taxes. So if there is any move by any part of the government to push them into production, then I will support that wholeheartedly, because they've been at the development stage for a long time.
Is there any time frame that these companies have in the development? Does the government put any time frame on them? Like, if you have these lands, you've been so long, so many years?
No, there is no time frame for the development of the mines. They can always claim they're proving resource.
The president has acknowledged you as the spokesperson for the oil and gas sector, the chief spokesperson, and he says that you have good relationship with the media, and I admire that with your response to the Guyanese critics' question. But some criticisms are out there that sometimes the government is too selective when releasing information to the media by the oil sector, or try to avoid certain important questions while the oil companies are more transparent with shareholders and to the rest of the world. But our government is too selective. What is your response to this criticism?
My response is that we've been the most transparent government ever on this matter. And we have not just been transparent in sharing information, but we have put in place a framework that will ensure accountability and transparency in the management of the oil and gas sector. The fact that Kaichor News chooses not to acknowledge that because it has an agenda can't be helped on our part. But if for any independent person coming to Guyana and looking at what we promised and what we have done, you would see that we have changed the entire framework for the management of the sector. I spoke earlier about the Natural Resources Fund Act. I spoke earlier about the Petroleum Activities Act, which was updated the 1986 Act. Now, when I spoke about the PSA, the new PSA, we not only solicited views from the public, but we passed modern pieces of legislation. We went to an auction so that we moved away from this first come, first served basis. We've passed a local content law that has benefited thousands of Guyanese and Guyanese companies. When are they going to acknowledge that we did all of this? I've spoken more about the oil and gas sector in a single press conference than you've had in 5 years of APNU, and that could be checked, verified. We have published every document that we have signed in the oil and gas sector. All of the licenses that APNU refused to publish, every license for the FPSOs we have published. We have published every environmental permit that we have issued. Even the ones that they didn't publish, we published for LISA 1 and LISA 2. So all of these information, we can't be helped. It can't be helped when you misinterpret different things. For example, often the people, when they speak abroad to their shareholders, they talk on the basis of the accounts of the company that they have to share with maybe it's a publicly traded company. Here, Kaichor News often doesn't get that there is a difference between the international financial reporting standards and compliance with the PSA. So they're very confused. For example, the one about how you account for profits. The standards are very different. I dealt with that. The same thing that goes towards, say, the decommissioning costs. Under the International Financial Reporting Standards, it's treated differently. Under the PSA, it's only deducted from production. So that means only the commissioned vessels you start deducting from. So how much goes to the cost bank for a figure that goes to the cost bank for decommissioning might be different than how it's treated in the International Financial Reporting Standard. These are things that in the Kiteshore News there's confusion because they don't have a lot of technical people and they work on the basis they get a lot of help from the politicians who half of the time don't know to. Like a Patterson would talk off the top of his head. And so I can't help that if you have deficiencies there. But I know that we have been more transparent almost on every issue. I can't help also that if I give you an answer and you don't like the answer, that you keep asking it over and over again, hoping my answer will change, and it will not change, because we have defined our position right from the beginning. So if, for example, decommissioning costs, it's bad in the PSA that they did not put up a separate account, but under this the last license we did, we said separate account, move the funds there. That we're correcting the deficiencies of the 2016 agreement. If you had to look on transparency, how the agreement was signed, if you talk about that transparency issue, by now you should have had Trotman and Nigel Hughes. You should have been questioning every bit of thing that they did. All that they did, and the trip to Texas and everything else paid by Exxon. But you give them a free pass because you're focused on the PPP government. It's not lack of transparency on our part, it's selective. You're being selective in how you reflect our answers and how you reflect the track record of the APNU government. That's, you're being selective, we are not.
Hi, could you tell me what's happening right now in government on the CGX front? What has to happen?
As I said before, I did not know, I don't know if Vikram Bharrat took it to the cabinet today, but he has to take a recommendation to the cabinet. He told me that he did not, in the meeting with CGX, did not hear anything about, or he did not get answers to the questions that we posed in a satisfactory manner. So I suspect his recommendation to the cabinet will be not to continue to engage with CGX.
Okay, is there any progress on the contract awards for any of the blocks?
No, that has not moved progress. Thank you.